All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We have a really special treat for you guys again. Welcome back to the program. We have historian, you've seen him on the Fox News channel, Victor Davis Hanson is back with us on the line. Mr. Hanson, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, your book, it was out last week. It's called The Case for Trump, and I'm really excited about this. I was reading some reviews. You've got some great recommendations from people like Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, Mark Levin. He said, quote, a brilliant embracing analysis from one of the great thinkers and writers of our time and a farmer to boot, Victor Davis Hanson. Hanson understood the circumstances that gave rise to Donald Trump early on, how the president has made long overdue changes, and why his enemies seek to destroy him. Some pretty high praise, sir.
Yeah, well, it's anybody who writes a dispassionate analysis, so it's not. I'm not part of the rah-rah or Trump's, Satan. He's not a Satan or a saint. He's turned out to be a very unlikely but successful candidate in a way nobody imagined, and then he defied all expectations by being a pretty good president, at least solving problems that had not been solved. And if you look at 3% economic growth or near record peacetime unemployment or record energy production, that in a way nobody had anticipated. And that gets people very angry. I noticed that in the Never Trump bulwark, I was called a Nazi last week, for basically a Nazi for writing the book. So I expected that, but it's been a pretty polarizing week for the first week that the book's in print. That get praise, but get very angry people as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the other reviews that I read about how never Trumpers aren't going to be happy with this, and then of course those people who are out to get Trump, they're not going to be happy with those on the traditional left. They're not going to be happy with this either, and that's because you've approached somebody like Donald Trump, the history that we've just seen. You're approaching it as a historian. That's what you do.
Yeah, I tried to have the book argue how did somebody with the first serious candidate without political and military experience, how did he defeat first 16 really qualified Republican primary candidates, craft a conservative, traditional Republican message in the sense of, traditionalist judges that he would appoint, deregulation, get rid of Obamacare, tax reform, but he added these wrinkles to it about secure the border, stop illegal immigration. Don't worry, China's not going to take over the world. We can stop it. It's cheating. It's asymmetrical, mercantile trade. The red state interior is not hollowed out for good. It's been a victim of bad decision-making. We'll restore cities like Milwaukee and Cleveland, Cincinnati. These are our workers. We use that word a lot, our, and we have to worry about them. They're not meth heads. You don't write them off. And then he also added to all of that, when we go overseas, we have to look at things in a cost-benefit analysis. We can't just do these optional engagements where, even when we're successful on the ground, in tactical engagements, we don't translate that to lasting strategic advantage. And that message was really geared to the states that were, I'm out here in California, and that's never going to flip red, and Texas is not going to flip blue in the immediate future. But those states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, the left thought that they were pretty much purple becoming blue, and that message that Trump had really resonated. And then the final thing is he was a strange messenger. He didn't change his accent like Hillary did when she went into Arkansas or the South, or Barack Obama did in the inner city, or he didn't put on camouflage and go duck hunting like John Kerry had, or he didn't go to the Indiana State Fair with jeans. He had that strange suit, Queen's accent, orange skin, weird hair, wherever he went. And people who were in the working class said, I not only like the message, but this guy talks like one of us, and he doesn't change. So whatever you think about him, he's authentic. And that nobody was prepared for that. And I think Trump saw that. He had an animal cunning. I don't mean animal in a pejorative sense, but a very instinctual view of what people were tired of. And they were tired of all these things you can't say, you can't do, and then America's in decline, and you just have to accept it. And you didn't build that. It's not the time to profit, and America's got to apologize. he astounded the political class, and he did after he took office. Just think of all the things they tried to do to stop him. I was counting them up in the book. I mean, remember they sued in 3 states on the voting machines, and they went to the emolument clause, and they introduced articles of impeachment, those ads telling the electors not to vote in the Electoral College, and 25th Amendment, Logan Act, the School by McCabe.
Yeah, we now know that whole 25th Amendment thing. We have McCabe out there saying that they were lobbying members of the cabinet, trying to figure out if they could get any of them to go along with the 25th Amendment coup, essentially. Now, you mentioned all of those people who've gone against them. In your book, you compare it to the Hanson regime. Tell us about that.
Well, in history, there's been societies in France and Constantinople, Spain, where a permanent class of bureaucrats, administrators get so large that they exist not to implement the policy of the ruler or the elected official, but to perpetuate themselves. And so we're seeing that in Washington. We've got, I think, nationwide, state, local, but in Washington, altogether about 25 million people work for government. And whether it's regulators or the IRS or whichever bureaucracy we're talking about, they have all the resources, and they go after individuals with unlimited government resources. And the individual bureaucrat is protected usually from being fired. So people feel they don't trust government. They're afraid of government. It gets larger and larger. They pay more taxes, and yet they get fewer services. So when Trump comes in as somebody who is not part of the political class, and he says that he wants to do all these strange things, make NATO accountable, make them pay their fair share, deregulate, open up ANWR, all of these EPA or foreign policy wonks, Council on Foreign Relations, Government Department at Harvard, Brookings Institute, Sierra Club, whatever all these groups are, and the media in connection with the government, they go ballistic. And I think that explains they thought that they had a moral right, that their lofty ends were so noble to get rid of Trump that they could use any means necessary to implement them. So they diluted the FISA court. The DOJ and the FBI did, but not telling the true nature of the Steele dossier, and they surveilled American citizens. They put an informant in the Trump campaign. They had a member of the Justice Department's wife working on this dossier. I think it's 22 now, Justice or FBI officials have had to resign. They talked about, or were reassigned. They talked about an insurance policy to either abort the Trump campaign or to make sure the presidency didn't work. They unmasked names of people who were surveilled. They went after officials, tapped their phones. They tapped the president's phone and leaked it. And so I think that part of the Mueller investigation, because I don't think they will find any collusion, but part of this mission was to create so much hysteria about collusion that they got Mueller rushed in, and in a preemptive fashion. We haven't talked about all of the abuses by the ancient regime or the deep state, and there are plenty. And I think maybe when Mueller shuts down, finally Trump can tell his lawyers, I'm going to start unredacted releases of this information. Mm-hmm. And I want to know why Samantha Power on 260 occasions asked to unmask names, and those names were leaked to the press, or why James Comey on 245 occasions in Congress said he didn't know or couldn't remember under testimony. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of legal exposure there in the effort to destroy Trump that we don't really talk about because of Mueller. But once that offensive ends, I think we'll see a new twist to things.
You are I think you're exactly right. We're talking with historian Victor Davis Hanson. His new book is out now. You need to check it out. It's called The Case for Trump. You're exactly right, Victor. He said he was going to release the FISA application. I've interviewed Devin Nunes, also one of Arkansas's congressmen who's on the House, the permanent House Select Committee on Intelligence as well. And they want these documents released eventually. But I do think had Trump released them before the Mueller report, the media wouldn't necessarily have to cover the substance, and they may not, in fact, even after the report. But it would look like they could say, well, he's just going after those who are trying to go after
No,
him.
you're absolutely right. I made that argument. Well, but once the Mueller thing is over, I think we can finally address situations like the sitting Department of Justice official meeting in a stealthy conference with Bill Clinton, whose wife was under investigation, or Andrew McCabe claiming he didn't have a conflict of interest when he was the chief investigator of Hillary's email scandal, when just 3 months before his wife had received $600,000+ in Clinton-related tax. There was all these things were going on, and we're asked to just forget about them because of Mueller. Well, when Mueller's over with, I don't know what the Democrats are going to do, because without Mueller and the collusion charge, they're going to have I know they have all these investigations, but they're going to be fragmented. They're going to be going after taxes, and a lot of Americans are going to get tired of it. Can you imagine Barack Obama negotiating the Iran deal in 2015 if the Republicans had called in Reggie Love, his bag man, and said, "Hey, Reggie, did you guys play cards the night of the bin Laden raid, as you said at the press conference, because the president was bored?" Or, "Hey, here's Tony Resco. He gave Obama a sweetheart land deal. Did Obama pay taxes on that gift?" And I don't think people would have liked that when the president of the United States is even negotiating a flawed deal. So at some point, I think the Democrats are going to have to give up. But in their defense, they decided to go full socialist with reparations and infanticide, Green Deal, wealth tax, high 90% bracket tax, Medicare for everybody, open borders, abolish ICE. Those are issues that are only polling about 20%, 30% approval. And if they want to go full socialism, Trump is going to, he's going to tell American people, last time they wanted Hillary and you didn't want, even if you didn't agree with me, you didn't want Hillary Clinton, and now he's going to be able to say, I may be a little crass sometimes, but listen, American voter, I'm the only thing between you and socialism.
Can you see a scenario where, from a historical perspective, I know we're not there yet, but in hindsight's 2020 once we get there. But speaking of 2020, the 2020 elections, the Democrats taking back control of the House of Representatives, it may just, in fact, remind everybody how much they disagree with the Democrat Party because of the things they're doing, the anti-Semitism resolution that kind of wasn't it ended up being, I think, anti-Semitic. How does this, and in your book, The Case for Trump, how does that, how does the 2020 race look for you?
Well, I think it looks pretty good, and I talked about that. And I think we got to remember that they took back the House because in about 35 seats in California, they lost about 8 seats to Republicans. But all over the country, most of those people who won, even in California, I'm in a district that flipped, they didn't run on what I just talked about or you talked about. It was, let's get health care, generic health care. Let's get a middle-class tax deal. And they ran a lot of veterans. And those people ran as moderates. They don't get much attention. But the people who were taking the party leftward, they were in safe, hard left seats in Minnesota or Michigan or New York. And so what the Democrats are sort of, and the problem is that their left wing has no general support in a general election. But they're the ones driving it. And there's all these other people in Trump congressional districts that Trump carried that did win. And I think they're going to flip. I think people are going to say, you know what? I may have voted for you 2 years ago, but whether you like it or not, I want to know. And their opponent will say to them, are you for infanticide, in theory, if it happens? Are you for reparations? Are you for the new Green Deal? Are you for abolishing ICE? Are you for giving my Medicare to everybody, even if they haven't paid in for it? Are you for open borders? Are you against the wall? And I think that's going to be very hard for them to answer those questions, and that they can attribute that to all of these hardcore socialists that are preaching to their own congressional choirs. So I think Trump's got a really good deal, and that's just them. If you look at Trump himself, I think you're seeing that he's speaking better. He's finally got a foreign policy team with Bolton and Pompeo that he feels comfortable with. Barr is a much better attorney general. He's got more discipline. He's a better speaker. And I think if he starts to address the one thing he hasn't addressed is the debt and the deficit and out of control spending, but he's talking about that. So I just think that he's getting better, his opponents are getting worse, and they're headed over the cliff, led by this Pied Piper, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they don't know how to stop her. They do not know how to stop her.
Oh my goodness!
The Democrat.
He's Victor Davis Hanson, folks. The book is The Case for Trump. He's a historian. This is an objective look, in my opinion. This is not just rah propaganda. I'm sure. Well, you know what, Victor? If you got called a Nazi last week after the release of this book, there's a growing list of people that get lumped into that category, and it really is the fringes. It's quite unfortunate. But I really appreciate you coming on the program, and I hope everybody goes out and gets your book, sir.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I understand you're a farmer, and we got a lot of farmers.
I am.
We got a lot of farmers in Arkansas, so you are welcome here anytime.
Well, I'm prejudiced, but I believe farmers are the salt of the earth. They made the country, and I hope they don't disappear. It's tough being a farmer, but I admire them so much.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on, sir. You have a great day.
You too.
All righty. Thanks.